Hi, I'm Teresa from Phoenix Gate Crafts, and today I am talking about lifelines. This is an in-depth review of lifelines for knitting. We don't really need lifelines for crochet just because it's so much easier to controllably frog in crochet. You know, just put a stitch marker where you want to frog to and then frog to that point. It's easy. But for knitting, because we have live stitches, and yes, this is, you'll see another video where I made this swatch, but with live stitches, the big problem happens when you screw up. Something doesn't work out right and you need to frog or rip it out and get back to a good starting point. Now, ideally, you're going to do a lifeline. And there's a reason I have stitch markers, because there are certain things you want to do and certain things you don't want to do. Now, you do a lifeline in dental floss, you can do it in fishing wire. I'm just using some yarn that contrasts with the yarn that I'm using. You want to be able to see it so you know where you put the lifeline in. Now, a traditional lifeline is something you put in on your live stitches. I typically use a yarn that is smaller than the yarn that I'm using. Now, you want to get in the loops, but you do not want to get inside your stitch markers that are on your needles. So you actually want to go under those so that you are not going to get the stitch marker. Because although this one is on an earring and it will open and close, a lot of them don't. So you can wind up a little bit stuck. And we don't want you winding up stuck. So just go under about 2 or 3 stitches. I use a bent tip just because I find it easier, and you pull through. Now, on one end, you could just leave it loose, or you can tie it to something big. This is from the skein of yarn that this little one came off of. Shout out to Kim Knits because she totally dyed this yarn. And this is the video you want to look for if you want to see this particular skein being made. But you want something that'll stop. You could also just have it attached to another stitch marker or something, or you can just leave it a little bit loose. You do want this piece of thread, yarn, whatever. Can you tell I've been cross-stitching more lately? And you want to make sure you're not splitting these loops. That can be a little bit of a problem. So you want to make sure you're going through the hole in your loops. That's why just doing 3 or 4, yeah, put it in. And now, once you've got this done, you can frog later. And when do you do this proactive lifeline? I typically do it, okay, no, I never do this, let's be honest. I'm going to show you what I actually do in a minute. But ideally, you would do this when you're going to start on something you are not sure about. A new stitch pattern, or it's been a few inches since your last one and you're doing a complex pattern. Anytime you think you're going to mess up, put the lifeline in before you do that. You know, if you're knitting socks and you're about to do the heel, put it in right before the heel. Now, I am skipping the stitch marker. I'm going under and totally missing it so I can put it in the last 3 stitches. Make sure you get all your stitches. Ta-da! And by doing this, we have now protected. This is our save point. I took off the little darning needle, mostly because it slipped off, and I can just leave this like this. and then I can knit a little bit more. Now, the only thing you have to be careful of is when you're knitting these stitches, you do not grab up your lifeline. It'll be a lot harder to pull out if you knit it. So you need to kind of move it down to the bottom, and when you're stitching, make sure you're only going through the actual loops and you're not picking up this extra thread here. That will be important. Now, this is if you do this if you are smart and you're thinking ahead. I am not smart. I don't think ahead. I am usually like, oh crap, I just messed up. I need to go back like so many rows. So what do I do? Well, I typically this is one of the benefits of having needles, interchangeable needles, because I can have this, just pull it out, and I can use this. Now, I am right-handed. I'm going to show you this right-handed and left-handed. Now, this is not restrictive. You don't have to be right-handed or left-handed to do it this way. It's more about if you did a right side row or a wrong side row, and if you need to do a right or a left. Because here's the tricky thing with handedness, with knitting. Most people who knit, regardless of whether they're right-handed or left-handed, knit from the left-hand needle onto the right-hand needle. However, some people are left-handed and do it the opposite, where they are knitting off of the right-hand needle and onto the left-hand needle. So when you're right-handed and you're doing a right side, going to a right side row, you're going to do it in your right hand. If you are right-handed and you are doing a wrong side row, you're going to do it left-handed, because doing it on the purl side is a huge pain in the ass. It's way harder to see your stitches and everything. You want to do it on the stockinette side, or whenever you go to a knit row. Just makes it so much easier. And after doing this, I'm going to show you, I'm going to pull this out and we will see if we did this lifeline correctly. So what you want to look for, especially handy if you've got a garter edge. You see how we've got our little V's coming out of this purl stitch, out of this purl bump? That's what we're looking for. Now for us, it's right side. For a left-handed person, this would be the wrong side, but we are going to pick up the right-hand side of the V. And then we're going to skip the left-hand side of the V and actually push that down and pick up the right-hand side of the next V. And then we're going to push down the left side and we're going to pick up the right side, and now we have 3 stitches on our needle. I typically do this. You could do it, by the way, with a separate piece of yarn and a darning needle like I did this first one. It works just exactly the same way, but that's not the situation I usually do these in. Anyway, now it gets tricky. You kind of have to follow a straight line. Now that you've got a few in, you follow a straight line over stockinette. And it's a lot easier to see the V. So you see this V, I go in under the right, over the left. And that'll have us lined up for the next one and the next one. And you just kind of push down the left and pick up the right, and you push in. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. And you'll notice that it's creating, because you're following where the stitches are, it's creating its own straight line, because everything should be on a fairly straight line. This gets a lot more complicated, of course, if you've got mixes of knits and purls, if you've got yarn overs, or you're adding stitches or anything like that. But this is, if you can find a stockinette row, this is the easiest way to do this, because it will just, after a minute, it will just line up, and you go under the right and over the left. And honestly, if you're off by like one row, it'll kind of fix itself. You're just trying to get one in every single column, so that way you don't wind up with any drop stitches. And push it through. This is why I like the 5-inch needles on the ChowGoo interchangeable set. Yep. And every once in a while you get a little confused. It's okay, just look at it and kind of trace. What's next to what? Whoops, don't go too far. That's the one that's right next to this one. That's the left-handed V. So I'm going under the right and over the left and under the right and over the left. And as long as you're slow and careful, you will wind up right above another purl on the other side. So we want to under the right, over the left, under the right, over the left, under the right, over the left. And now we're all the way across. Make sure it's solidly on the needle. And now, because imagine I messed up on here, right here, this one. I screwed up right here. I didn't really, we're just going to pretend. And now I'm going to pull this out. Now here's the test to see if a lifeline actually worked, because you are knitting and you're going to basically pull back to this old lifeline. This one came out. This one came out. I can tink back to this spot, and all of these stitches are still live on this string. And now if I pull this out, if I decide to pull this out, I can just pull this off. And it will just pull. And now here's the moment of truth. Now we can kind of tell that there is one loop kind of remaining over here, but it winds up with loops perfectly on my string. Now, we don't always want the right side knit row. Sometimes we want the wrong side purl row. Or if you are a lefty, you will want to do this from the left. And so you're going to find on the left the same way we did on the right, where you are going to find, if you're a left-handed person, you're going to find the purl row, and you are going to pull this, and you are going to find right above the purl row, because that's going to be your right side row. I'm going to find right under the purl row, because remember, this is a purl row. And and either way, right-handed or left-handed, we're going to go on our left hand, and we are going to go under as best we can the left side of the stitch. The edge stitch is always like the hardest. It's always really hard under a purl row, but we're still looking for them V's. But now we're doing the left side, because this is a V, this is a V. It just comes up. And then we want that. And now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to go here, and then we're going to go under the left, and for us righties, this is not comfortable. That's okay, we'll survive. The lefties on the other side were not comfortable. They survived. Not everything we have to do is super comfortable. Yes, sometimes we hold things a little funky. And as long as we're going under the left-hand side of the stitch, coming from left to right, we are fine. We are fine. And we're doing the same thing. Well, since I've basically shown it to you once already, I'm going to stop here. But you understand, you could do an emergency lifeline whenever you need. Whenever you realize, dang, I messed up. So I hope you found this useful. Feel free to use Lifeline. Proactive lifelines are ideal, but not required. Happy crafting. Bye.